In the serene hours of February 27th, 1999, 17-year-old Michelle Bright had just relished a delightful evening with friends, celebrating a birthday in the charming town of Goolgong, New South Wales. As she strolled back to her parents' residence, the tranquility of the night was shattered. Michelle never returned home. This once peaceful community was soon enveloped in a haunting enigma, a mystery that would linger for 21 years until the identity of the individual responsible for Michelle's tragic fate was uncovered. When Michelle sought her mother's permission to attend a friend's 15th birthday celebration on the evening of February 26th, her mother readily agreed, confident in her daughter's sense of responsibility. Goolgong, with its close-knit population of fewer than 2,000, was a haven of safety. After an enjoyable evening, as the party drew to a close and farewells were exchanged, Michelle stepped out into the early morning hours of February 27th. Her friends anticipated reuniting with her at school, but fate had other plans. During her solitary walk home, the vibrant 17-year-old inexplicably vanished. When her mother awoke to find her daughter missing from her bed, panic ensued, prompting the authorities to initiate a frantic search. Speculations arose. Had she perhaps been intoxicated and suffered an accident? Or had she opted to stay with a friend? The community clung to the hope that there was a reasonable explanation for Michelle's sudden absence. The last confirmed sighting of her was at 12:45 a.m., when a friend dropped her off on Main Street. However, after 3 agonizing days of searching, a grim revelation emerged. The partially clothed body of Michelle Bright was discovered in a patch of tall grass along a railway track near Barney's Reef Road, heartbreakingly less than a kilometer from her home. The police diligently pursued countless leads, yet the identity of Michelle's killer remained elusive. In a significant move, Minister for Police, Michael Daly, announced that the New South Wales government would offer a substantial reward of $500,000 for information leading to the resolution of Michelle's tragic case, marking it as the second highest reward in the region's history. The community of Goolgong buzzed with discussions surrounding this senseless crime, as residents speculated on the possible identity of the perpetrator. In such a close-knit town, an unsettling atmosphere prevailed, with many residents glancing over their shoulders, haunted by the thought that the culprit might be among them. This pervasive anxiety lingered for years, only to be compounded decades later, when it was revealed that the individual responsible had quietly slipped away. Just 2 weeks after Michelle's body was discovered, he relocated from Goolgong to the outskirts of Sydney, convinced he had evaded justice. The case seemed destined to remain unresolved, as investigators identified 5 primary suspects over the years, yet lacked the concrete evidence necessary to take action. Consequently, the investigation grew cold, leaving those who cherished Michelle to grapple with the painful reality that her assailant was living freely, unpunished. It wasn't until 2019 that a breakthrough emerged. A dedicated team of detectives revisited Michelle's case, meticulously analyzing all available evidence, which allowed them to refine the list of suspects from 5 to 2. Among them was Craig Henry Rumsby, a 50-year-old father of 4 and former neighbor of the Bright family. With renewed confidence in their lead, an undercover operation was initiated to cultivate a relationship with Rumsby. This operation commenced in November 2019, as Rumsby encountered a group he believed to be affiliated with a gang. An intricate narrative was woven, featuring a shadowy figure known as the Big Boss, promises of substantial financial gain, and a corrupt officer, though all of it was a mere fabrication. For the subsequent 8.5 months, Rumsby found himself deeply entwined in a series of undertakings for the gang. The members consistently emphasized the paramount importance of loyalty within their ranks. It was in March 2020 that a corrupt police detective entered the scene. During a conversation with this undercover officer, Rumsby revealed that authorities had attempted to link him to Michelle's murder. As 5 months elapsed, the group diligently cultivated their connection with Rumsby. Eventually, several members began reaching out to inform him that law enforcement was scrutinizing him in connection with a particular case. One individual cautioned Rumsby, stating, "We cannot proceed if one of us is under scrutiny. This situation must be resolved before we move forward." On August 10, 2020, the reward for information was elevated to a staggering $1 million. Rumsby responded to this appeal, shared on the New South Wales Police Force Facebook page, expressing, "It is truly heartbreaking that her killer remains at large. Michelle was like a sister to me, and my heart goes out to her family." Shortly thereafter, Rumsby was summoned to meet the boss. The boss informed him that he was a suspect in 2 investigations and that this scrutiny was casting a shadow over the family. It was at this moment that the trap was laid. The boss warned Rumsby, "If you are not forthcoming with me, mate, I cannot assist you, and the consequence of that is we will regrettably have to cease our collaboration." Initially, Rumsby feigned ignorance, asserting to the boss that he had no knowledge of the case. However, approximately 2 hours later, he was presented with copies of police documents and records, including a photograph of his red Ford Falcon. Shortly after relocating in 1999, Rumsby had received a phone call from the police regarding Michelle's case. The following day, the red Ford Falcon he owned at that time was consumed by flames. In a soft yet grave tone, he began to divulge to the boss the details of how he had taken Michelle's life, recounting how he had covered her mouth until she ceased to breathe. He mentioned leaving his neighbor's residence around 11 p.m. and driving to a friend's house before making his way into Gulgong in his red Ford Falcon. He made a brief stop at the post office hotel before proceeding to the commercial hotel to converse with the publican. During their discussion, he mentioned that he might have departed from there and walked in a particular direction, yet he professed to have no recollection of the events concerning Michelle. The boss proposed that it could be beneficial for his associates to escort Rumsby to Gulgong in an effort to stimulate his memory. Following this, they would transport him to Mooney, where a chartered plane awaited to whisk him away to Ballina that very night for a discreet retreat. Later that evening, while traversing Barney's Reef Road in Gulgong, Rumsby recounted the chilling act of dragging Michelle by her hands across the road into the underbrush, ensuring her body would remain undiscovered. He insisted that he did not believe he had assaulted Michelle, although he conceded to having pulled down her bra after the incident. Rumsby recounted returning home, taking a shower, enjoying another beer, laundering his clothes, and then retiring for the night. The following day, Craig Rumsby found himself in custody. With the pandemic severely impacting the judicial system, it was not until May 2023 that Rumsby faced trial. After a harrowing 7 weeks, the jury rendered a guilty verdict. On August 7th, Justice Robert Allen Hume sentenced him to 32 years in prison, with Rumsby ineligible for parole for 24 years, meaning he would be 77 before he could even contemplate release. The resolution of Michelle's case was a testament to the unwavering dedication and intelligence of the law enforcement team, who were resolute in their pursuit of justice. Although he may have evaded accountability for 2 decades, Craig Rumsby is destined to spend the remainder of his life behind bars, where he rightfully belongs. In the sultry days of August 1986, a spirited 13-year-old named Jennifer Bastion departed from her home in Tacoma, Washington. With a sense of adventure, she mounted her bicycle, leaving a note for her parents to assure them of her return by dinner time. The last sighting of Jennifer occurred at 6 p.m., a mere half hour before she was expected home. After that moment, she vanished without a trace. An extensive investigation ensued, leading authorities to suspect a connection to another girl who had mysteriously disappeared under similar circumstances. As the years unfolded, a startling revelation emerged, redirecting the course of the inquiry entirely. On that fateful August 4th, at precisely 2:30 p.m., Jennifer set off on her bike, eager to hone her skills for an impending tour of the picturesque San Juan Islands. She had meticulously planned a 5-mile loop through the familiar trails of Point Defiance Park, a beloved cycling destination. Numerous witnesses observed her enjoying the afternoon, and all appeared serene. The final confirmed sighting was at 6 p.m., after which an inexplicable event transpired, preventing her from fulfilling her promise to return by 6:30 p.m. When the clock struck 8:30 p.m. and Jennifer had yet to arrive, her concerned parents reported her absence to the authorities. A thorough search of Point Defiance Park and its surroundings yielded no clues, yet the quest for answers persisted. Volunteers rallied to piece together the events of that day. Tragically, 3 weeks later, the search culminated in heartbreak. On August 28th, a jogger traversing the same 5-mile drive where Jennifer had last been seen detected a disturbing odor. Upon closer examination, a lifeless body was discovered. The police confirmed the identity as Jennifer Bastion, with her bicycle found nearby. Following a forensic investigation, the coroner determined that she had succumbed to asphyxia. The case had transformed from a missing persons inquiry into a chilling realization. A predator was at large. Just 4.5 months prior to Jennifer's mysterious disappearance, another young girl had vanished without a trace. Following the tragic discovery of Jennifer's body, the detectives delving into her case began to entertain the unsettling notion that these two incidents might be interconnected. The striking parallels between the cases were impossible to overlook. 12-year-old Michelle Welch was last seen on March 26, 1986, in the serene Puget Park of Tacoma, Washington. On that fateful day, Michelle, much like Jennifer, had ventured out on her bicycle, accompanied by her 2 younger sisters, one riding a bike and the other gliding along on a skateboard. Upon their arrival at the park, Michelle's sisters eagerly dashed off to play, while she resolved to return home to prepare lunch for them. An hour later, at precisely 11 a.m., Michelle returned to the park, placing the lovingly packed lunch on one of the tables. She then set off in search of her sisters, who had wandered to a nearby store to use the restroom. When the girls returned, they discovered the lunch waiting for them, yet their beloved older sister had inexplicably vanished. They continued to play until around 2 p.m., when one of them noticed Michelle's bike abandoned alongside her own. A wave of anxiety washed over them. If Michelle was still in the park, where could she possibly be? Unable to locate her, the girls hurried home to inform their parents. By 3:10 p.m., law enforcement had arrived at the park to initiate a search for Michelle. Hours later, her lifeless body was discovered, less than half a mile from where her sisters had spent the majority of their time. It was evident that the individual responsible for this heinous act was a deeply disturbed and violent person. Although swabs were taken based on the injuries found, the nascent state of DNA forensics in 1986 offered little assistance in identifying the perpetrator. The investigators assigned to both Michelle and Jennifer's cases were increasingly convinced they were pursuing the same individual, as the similarities were far too pronounced to be mere coincidence. A deluge of tips poured in, each one meticulously examined in the hopes of uncovering the truth. Regrettably, none of the leads yielded any fruitful outcomes. As months morphed into years, the investigations grew cold. In 2006, the forensic swabs collected from Michelle underwent a fresh examination, resulting in the development of a DNA profile. Yet any glimmer of hope for a resolution to this 2-decade-old mystery was swiftly extinguished when the profile failed to match any entries in the databases. The next significant breakthrough emerged in 2013, when an investigator revisited Jennifer's case. He proposed testing the swimsuit she had worn on that fateful day for DNA evidence. This garment had remained untested for years, as it was discovered around her ankle, leading to the presumption that it would yield no substantial DNA from the assailant. However, upon analysis, the swimsuit revealed the presence of bodily fluids belonging to the perpetrator. It was now imperative to compare these samples. The results of this test astonished all those involved in the investigation. They were not pursuing a single perpetrator, but rather two distinct individuals. The DNA profiles from Michelle and Jennifer were not congruent, necessitating separate investigations. The sample from Jennifer's swimsuit was cross-referenced with the national database, yet yielded no matches. Delving into historical records, the investigators compiled a list of potential suspects from which they sought DNA samples. Among these individuals was Robert Washburn. By 2017, Robert was a 60-year-old resident of Illinois. When approached for a DNA sample, he complied without hesitation, an action that did not align with typical guilty behavior. However, the results revealed that Robert Washburn was indeed the individual they had been seeking, responsible for the tragic fate of Jennifer Bastion. Washburn was apprehended and extradited back to Washington to face the charges against him. In 1986, he was a 29-year-old mechanic employed by Boeing, residing a mere 9 blocks from Jennifer's family home. Eventually, Washburn married and relocated, but his past would soon catch up with him. He was a father, embracing the life of a liberated man for the subsequent 30 years, all the while concealing the dark shadows of his past. To those in his circle, Washburn was merely the devoted caregiver of his disabled daughter. Although his name had surfaced in the early stages of the investigation, there was insufficient evidence to link him to the case, relegating him to the status of one among many suspects. As the date of his trial loomed closer, Washburn shifted his plea from not guilty to guilty regarding the charges against him. He received a sentence of 26.5 years in prison, with a minimum of 20 years before he could be eligible for parole. While he remained silent during the sentencing, a written statement was presented on his behalf, acknowledging the profound pain and loss his actions had inflicted on many. Patty Bastion, the mother of the victim, conveyed to the court the persistent cloud of fear that loomed over her family, particularly on pleasant summer days. "We continued to live and laugh and love, but in a profoundly altered manner," she expressed. She recounted how the crime had transformed the city, with children no longer playing outside unsupervised, and the simple act of walking to school becoming fraught with anxiety. Jennifer's sister, Teresa Bastion, poignantly remarked that she had not taught her daughter to ride a bike, stating, "You made me an only child." In a twist of fate, DNA evidence ultimately brought some semblance of justice for Michelle Welch. A family tree was constructed through DNA phenotyping, leading to a connection with 2 brothers, both potential suspects, who resided in Tacoma at the time of Michelle's disappearance. Armed with this information, law enforcement sought DNA samples from the brothers, ultimately identifying Gary Hartman as a match. He was charged and brought to trial in 2022. Following his conviction, Hartman was overcome with emotion, expressing his remorse by stating, "I am so sorry." The 70-year-old received a sentence of 26 years in prison, indicating that he is likely to spend the remainder of his life incarcerated. In court, Michelle's mother, Barbara Leonard, along with her younger sisters, Angela Velasquez and Nicole, shared the profound impact of Michelle's loss on their lives. Barbara reflected on Michelle's joyful nature and her trusting disposition, revealing her deep wish to have taken Michelle's place. "Today is the day Hartman stands before the judge. I believe he should be locked away permanently. While this will not bring my daughter back, it is a step towards justice," she stated. Nicole elaborated on the challenges of maturing too quickly and the persistent nightmares that haunt her since her sister's passing. She admitted to having difficulty forming connections with others, including her family, due to her fear of further loss. Despite her pain, she expressed that she has found it in her heart to forgive Hartman. On a warm summer evening, June 29, 1986, in Salem, Massachusetts, Claire Gravel was enjoying a celebration with her softball team at Major Magleish's pub. At just 20 years old, she was pursuing a degree in computer science at Salem State College. After sharing a few drinks with friends, one of them dropped her off at her apartment around 1:30 a.m. Following this, the details surrounding Claire's fate became unclear. The next day, a body was discovered in Beverly, Massachusetts, just a short distance from Salem. The victim was a young woman who had suffered severe injuries and had been strangled. This young woman was later confirmed to be Claire. Investigators faced significant challenges as there were no known individuals who had expressed any intent to harm her. The friend who had given her a ride mentioned that they could not see Claire enter her apartment due to the darkness and speculated that she may have been abducted. There were no indications that Claire was involved with anyone romantically or had any issues with a stalker. Additionally, her neighbors reported no unusual sounds or activities, as many were already asleep at that hour. Ultimately, the investigation went cold and remained unresolved for nearly 40 years. In 2012, cold case detectives reopened Claire's case, leading to a retesting of evidence from the original investigation for DNA analysis. In 2022, the findings from this retesting were disclosed, resulting in an indictment by an Essex County grand jury against 62-year-old John Carey. At the time, Carey was already serving a sentence at the Massachusetts Correctional Institution in Concord for a 2008 attempted murder conviction. In 2007, he had gone to a neighbor's home where Rosemary Dissin was present. Claiming to be meeting her husband for a drink, he attacked her when she informed him that her husband was not home. Carey attempted to strangle her with a tie he had brought, but was unaware that her 12-year-old son was also at home. In a violent confrontation, he used a kitchen knife to stab the boy in the back, allowing both mother and son to escape and seek assistance. Rosemary harbored a deep conviction that, had her son not intervened, Carey would have taken her life. In a shocking revelation to law enforcement, Carey disclosed his fascination with asphyxiation, asserting that their encounter was consensual, a claim Rosemary vehemently rejected, viewing it as an attempt to further victimize her by insinuating an affair with her neighbor. During the investigation, authorities unearthed Carey's computer, which was alarmingly populated with images and videos depicting women in the throes of strangulation. Ultimately, a jury rendered a verdict of guilty for attempted murder, sentencing Carey to 2 decades behind bars. Although he was eligible for early release due to good behavior, Rosemary was recently informed of his impending release and felt a wave of relief wash over her when this new indictment thwarted his exit from prison. She had long feared that he would seek her out upon his release. Further details regarding the evidence the state possesses against Carey in connection with the murder of Claire Gravel are anticipated to emerge in upcoming court proceedings. Currently, there are no updates regarding the scheduling of his next court appearance. Claire Gravel's family, including her father and siblings, expressed their profound relief and gratitude in a media statement, celebrating the identification of a suspect after enduring years of uncertainty.